Well, welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, on this absolutely roasting Friday evening. If you are joining us from inside or outside, let us know, because we are very jealous of everybody that is outside. It is absolutely roasting. What a hot day we have here in Scotland. This is the state of Scottish football, and we have the famous barbershop quartet back for another season of cinch Premiership action. We've got Craig, we've got Greg, we've got Dave, and Craig was just telling us before he came on there that he's feeling a bit like Neil Lennon. He is not hungry. He is starving for success on this podcast this season. Craig, welcome back.
Thanks, mate. Good to be back.
As we're saying, you just finished your session with Paul Slane in the Glasgow Boca Juniors.
I did, aye. They had me doing doggies. Cy Ferry was shouting at me to lose weight, and I ended up spewing at the side of the pitch. Aye. So it was pretty much like a fatter version of Slaney's comeback documentary.
To be fair, the hairstyle's going that way as well, but we'll talk about that later on. Greg, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. You're giving us big build up. Everyone's roasting, starving, hungry, and I'm sitting with a jumper on, just look like I've sitting somewhere far north. But I mean, I have moved north. I'm not in Edinburgh boy anymore. I'm living in Fife, so it's a wee bit colder. So that's why I've got the jumper on.
To be fair, Evolution's still to hit Fife, so you'll maybe get the temperature later on. Dave,
true.
Let's start with Dundee United. Everyone says 7's a lucky number, just not for the Tangerines last night.
Well, 7 up was a big number, a big drink number in terms of Dundee FC supporters. There was plenty of 7 up banners, and if you were a Dundee FC supporter, and well, there's no other way to put it. Colin, embarrassing. Jack Ross made it himself, and I mean, he's in Alkmaar a different post position in Holland, but yeah, there's no other way to put it. Embarrassing.
Embarrassing, Craig. Would you go along with that?
I think so. Especially when you look at how they performed in the first leg. You know, I think on paper, when the draw got made, a lot of people would have expected Alkmaar to go through quite comfortably. But Dundee United showed that last week that necessarily wasn't going to be the case. You know, they scored a terrific goal through Middleton. And while you thought that it would be difficult for them over there, I certainly don't think that any of us expected that first half capitulation to happen. I mean, they were just completely all over the shop.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, it was almost a sort of, it was like Scotland versus the Netherlands all over again. James McFadden had given Scotland that sort of boost, the same way Glenn Middleton had for Dundee United, but then travelling to the Netherlands really doesn't suit a lot of Scottish people, does it?
No, definitely not. And I'm looking at Craig in the corner. It didn't suit him that time. We were in Netherlands many years ago. Didn't agree with you at the time. We had your performance. That trip left a lot to be desired for, but we'll not get into that. But I think a lot can be kind of made settled towards Jack Ross in terms of tactics. You know, kind of looking at that. I know some people are talking around. You know, there was no kind of obvious defensive midfielder there. You know, you're going across to Alkmaar, knowing that they're going to come and attack you, kind of went with a back four with no kind of set midfielder as well. Especially Mulgrew and Edwards aren't renowned for pace. So again, there's questions there. But for me, the main thing is just sort of the kind of heart and endeavour. I think, what was it, 6 goals in 26 minutes or something, Jack Ross was saying. Obviously from the first goal going into the, you know, half time, you know, going out at Jack Ross, keep it tight, you know, let's get through the first couple of minutes, and can't even last a minute before conceding the next goal. It was just capitulation is the right word, and I'm sure we'll unpack some of the decisions made, but yeah, really probably up there along with Hibs as well in terms of that 7-0 defeat with the record bad performance for a Scottish side. So a lot to be improved on for Dundee United.
Had to get that one in there. Dave, take a look at it. Where did it go wrong? I mean, you could say it all went wrong from the first whistle, but in terms of Dundee United, they came out, they looked as if they could match Alkmaar for a while, and then almost as if as soon as that first goal went in, it was like the heads went down and the tie was over from that point. Is that coming down to a lack of experience for these guys, or was it down to, as Greg was saying, the tactics of Jack Ross last night?
I think it's a mixture of both of it, in all honesty, Colin. I mean, experience-wise, it'll be the first time when the players have played in a European tie, albeit they played last Thursday at Paradise, but it'll be the first time they play in a European tie of that magnitude for some time, or for some players, the first time, because you've got to remember, United have taken a lot of young players, and this will be the first time they've played such a thing. But irrespective of that as well, they've had players such as Dylan Levitt, who's been and done it for club and country, Man United included in that as well. Mulgrew been there and done it for club and country. Bilgriti, there's actually been a few question marks raised around Bilgriti. I've probably got that pronunciation wrong, by the way, so apologies for that. But I noticed a tweet by Nicholas van der Curia with potential bringing in Xander Clark. But I think that'd be a panic buy more than anything else. Not because Xander Clark's a rubbish goalkeeper, more because of how things have went for Dundee in the goalkeeping department of late, just in the sense of how much goalkeepers they've purchased, and Benji Seeker's going to Celtic more than the quality as a so plenty of things went wrong. Mentality's got to be questioned in this regard, because I seen a tweet last night that obviously Pedro Caixinha got a horrendous result for Rangers. The Hibs result, as we've alluded to, under Pat Fenlon. Many other results, the Craig Levein 4-6-0 for Scotland, which was embarrassing to say the least. You just hope this isn't a big CV result for Jack Ross. It's going to signal his management career, like it has for your Levein's, like it has for your Mark McGee's, and like it has for Pedro Caixinha's, and so forth. You just hope this isn't a Jack Ross signalled result that's going to deteriorate his management career. I hope it doesn't, but it potentially could.
Xander Clark's an interesting one. It's the first I'd actually heard that, and if you've caught anything of his brother's appearances on podcasts, he'll be disappointed if Dundee United is his final output. I mean, I'm sure he was clamouring for him to get that Rangers #1 jersey. But yeah, I mean, you can blame the goalkeeper, you can blame the defence, you can blame the inexperience, and it is a lesson that Dundee United will have taken from last night, and it's just about how they bounce back. You take a look at St Johnstone last season, obviously doing very well in the qualifiers, only crashing out to, was it Fenerbahce or Galatasaray, one of the two?
Galatasaray.
The Galatasaray, and then going on to have an absolutely shocking season. So you've got to look at Dundee United and hope that they can learn their lessons from this game, put it behind them, take the experience and continue on what was a success last year and not go the same route that St Johnstone did. But when you look at it, Craig, I mean, Dundee United overall, I'm sure they'll be happy enough with the victory at Tannadice. They walk away with about £1 million in prize money, and they can focus on the league. I think it was always going to be a tough ask for them to get into the group stage.
No, it was, but I mean, I see so many parallels between Jack Ross this time last season. Obviously, we played Rijeka in the similar. I don't know. I'd be lying if I could tell you what competition and what round it was, but we found ourselves in a good position going away to Croatia, and one mistake, and we ended up losing 4-1 in a game that was never a 4-1. And it'll be about if Jack Ross has learned his mistakes for being at Hibs. I mean, we've all known his record in the so-called big games. It wasn't great, and he didn't seem to ever bounce back from those sort of big game moments either. I mean, you can argue, obviously, beating Dundee United and beating Rangers were big games, but that's 2 out of a potential at least a dozen. So it'll be interesting to see how he himself bounces back for this. I think Dundee United left themselves in a hiding to nothing with how long it took for them to bring him in. I know there was a situation between Tam, Courts. Dave will point me in the right direction on that one. And what happened to him over the summer. But you almost, you kind of need to play the cards you're dealt with. And it seems as if they're, as Dave was saying, they've recruited a lot of youth, but you look at that Dundee United team last night, littered with internationals, Tony Watt, Charlie Mulgrew played in the Champions League, Stephen Fletcher's in the twilight of his career, but he's played at the highest level, both in the UK and abroad. I think their problem will lie in goals. That boy looks like he's never seen a pair of goalie gloves in his life.
He's the new Vasilis Barkas.
It was absolutely hopeless. And with what Dave's saying as well, does this blot Jack Wright's sort of CV? It just adds to it. because it's not like he's only done it at Dundee United. He'd done it at Hibs. He'd done it at Sunderland as well in these bigger games. So I think if they're wanting to be a success, they need to open the checkbook a bit and maybe spend a wee bit more money, because I can't see them being a success with, especially if the performances like last night or anything to go by.
Greg, obviously they came up against your Hearts side on Sunday. How are you feeling going into that game?
Listen, I've said this a few times last season as well. It's like a side kind of in turmoil, on the reeling on the back of a terrible defeat. The perfect tonic for that, and I'm sure the club doctor will have said that, is you need to play Hearts, and that's exactly what Dundee United have got. Because listen, Dundee United will come there. As I said, you all said they're littered with internationals, even guys like the new Australian left back, Aziz Bezic. Jamie McGrath has been involved in Ireland. Yeah, thank you, our expert there, correcting me on that one. I've also got Jamie McGrath as well, obviously, in the Ireland setup as well. So, I mean, it'll be a side that comes to Tynecastle. We've seen last season as well. The games we've had Mickey Mellon's Melon Ball, then had Tam Courts as well that kind of tried to play a bit. So I think Jack Ross has played Hearts enough over his career that they'll come and be stodgy. I would expect guys like Nicky Clark to come on the side. I think as well, obviously, Middleton will start as well. I'm interested to know if this they've got gets involved. I know, listen, we don't want to talk about kind of knee-jerk reactions and whatnot, but certainly with Eriksson, he was brought in January because I think they knew Seacrest was going to leave. By all accounts, he's had a disappointing pre-season or looked bad in training, which is why they went for obviously the Australian keeper, and then obviously now you've seen them with Xander Clark. I mean, I would take Xander Clark as a backup for Hearts. Again, I have the fear if Hearts go to Zurich and Craig Gordon's out with a hammy. Yeah, I mean, something could happen to Hearts if Ross Stewart's been asked to keep go for Hearts. So, I mean, yeah, listen, I would prefer Dundee United to not, but listen, I think Hearts need to bounce back a win after the derby last week.
Greg, we're going to get you to drop and come back because I think the Fife Wi-Fi is playing up on you there, mate. But we'll get you back in a minute. In the meantime, we've seen Craig there crossing his fingers, hoping for a Craig Gordon injury. All he needs to do is come to the edge of the box, and there's every chance he'll fly kick someone and get sent off. So don't worry about that. Look, going into this game on Sunday, Dundee United versus Hearts, we're looking at it as a Lawrence Shanklin derby. I think Hearts coming off that game on Sunday against yourselves, Craig, what did you think of them? It's difficult to tell for an Edinburgh derby. I thought both teams were pretty even, and I think a draw was a fair result. But comparing Hearts to the team of last season, I think there was just something missing in the middle of the park. I
would tend to agree with that. I think Beningame will make a big difference for them when he's back fit again. They've played Harron and that George Grant in the middle, and there's not. I think Harron is really good at what he does in terms of his defensive output, but that midfield doesn't give you a lot of mobility. Those two, admittedly, it was the only time I've seen Grant, so I can't really, comment on what he's like too much. But he never really stood out. I thought, the difference for Hearts this season, as Greg was mentioning, it'll be two things. One is keeping Craig Gordon fit, because if he gets injured, then this Ross Stewart that they've got in reserve is not up to scratch whatsoever. So that's why my fingers were crossed, because I'm hoping that does indeed happen. And secondly, Barry Mackay. I think Barry Mackay showed with his pass on Sunday that he is a difference maker, especially at this level. And I think it's a dangerous mix they've got, with Mackay on one side, Forrest on the other, and Boyce and Shanklin through the middle. But as the game kind of wore on Sunday, there was not really anything else that there wasn't that sort of difference making. I know it was sort of last minute, but we had somebody like Martin Boyle coming off the bench who made a decisive impact. Ginelli or Gary Mackay-Steven, I don't think would have made the same impact for Hearts, if needed. So I still think they're lacking something in that forward area. But based on all the chat for them for last season, they're certainly, I know Greg will disagree with me, but I don't think they're as good as what they're made out to be at this moment in time, anyway.
We're going to go for our predictions for this one. It is Hearts versus Dundee United. It is taking place on Sunday at 4 o'clock. Interestingly enough, it's not on the telly, and we'll cover the new TV deal and what that uncovers for Scottish football coming up in the next couple of years. But here's the odds with the bookmakers. If you are going to gamble, please gamble responsibly. Hearts are the favourites at 3-5. The draw is 11-4. And Dundee United are as big as 11-2. Dave, I'm going to start with yourself as our resident Tangerine. How do you see this one going? How are you going to predict it?
Yeah, I think Hearts will be too strong for United. I'm going to go for 2-0 to the Jambos.
2-0 to the Jambos. Craig?
I'll take a 1-0 score draw.
Is that with your head or your heart?
I can't do it. There's not on. I can't do it. So I'll
Craig,
take the
you're
draw.
back now. How are you seeing this one?
I think it'll be a tight game. I think, obviously, I kind of heard Craig mention there as well that Hearts need kind of more attacking options and depth. Hearts will just nick it. It might be a set piece or a late goal. So I'll go 1-0 Hearts.
1-0 Hearts. Let's see what you are predicting in the comment section. Jonathan Brown saying 2-0 to Hearts. John McCauley says it's got a draw all over it. FTB saying 3-0 to Hearts. And Jonathan Brown coming back in here. This one will cheer you up, Craig. We need a strong Hibs in the league. Defos look stronger. Boyle's a great signing.
Totally agree.
Did you pay someone to come in and put these comments in?
Absolutely not.
Right, now this siren is not from Greenock. Anybody that watches AXON knows it's normally from Greenock, but it's not. Who's going to hold their hand up and admit they're living in the Thatcher country?
It's not in Edinburgh. Not in my quiet cul-de-sac anyway.
Right, I've not made a prediction. I'm going to go with a 1 each draw. I think Dundee United can try and get themselves something back after it, and I'm not too sure on Hearts, especially in the defensive quarter after the replacement for John Souttar. He was kind of all over the place, I think, in the game on Sunday. So we'll see how that one goes. We'll move on and we will hit the west coast of Scotland as Rangers take on St Johnstone. Rangers coming into the back of this after their 3-0 victory over Union Saint-Gallion, or however you pronounce that one. It's another one that Dave might correct us on later on. They now go into the playoff round against PSV to see if they can join Celtic in the Champions League. Craig, great comeback from Rangers on Tuesday night. I think a lot of people maybe had a slight inkling that it could go that way, considering some of the results that they got in Europe last year.
Who's on the motorbikes tonight? No, they were always in my shout, especially after how last season went. I think they were fortuitous in the slightest that they got the penalty when they did. I think if they can, if they go in at half time still sort of 2-0 down on aggregate, they're maybe going to find it more of an uphill struggle. But, the customary penalty to Rangers coming from some... I still don't understand what the defender was playing at. No. I think UEFA, if they were looking to investigate some dodgy betting patterns on Rangers getting a penalty in the 44th minute, they'd be looking at, the bank accounts of a USG player, because that's the only explanation you can have for it. But they've shown, I think, in Europe they're a bit of a different force, especially when they're, behind in games. We've seen it so many times. We've done it last season, and I thought based on the, given how poor they were in the first leg, I thought based on their second half performance, especially at Ibrox, they were well worth the win and go through to the next round to face PSV. Yeah, and Craig, when you looked at it, the Belgian team just weren't the same team that Rangers faced 7 days previously. It was almost as if they came to Glasgow and were almost sort of shocked at the atmosphere. And as Craig says, a European night doesn't go without Rangers getting a penalty, and that's not being biased or anything like that. It's just the way that it seems to go.
Yeah, I think we've seen last season as well with Rangers run to the Europa League final that the Ibrox crowd gave them a lift. And again, I think how it worked was very fortuitous that the second legs always seem to be at Ibrox as well. So I think in terms of your mentality, I think going out there, again, you can play for a draw, play for a 1-0. Obviously, Dortmund, they kind of romped it, but it gives them a fighting chance. Whereas when you seen last night with Dundee United, it's going out, playing your second leg away, it becomes a bit more difficult. So be interesting in the next round to see how Rangers approach that. Obviously, they play in Eindhoven on Tuesday night. So again, sorry, they play Ibrox, on Tuesday night, and then the following week they have to go to Eindhoven. So be interested to see how they approach that. But Rangers were worth their win, to be honest.
And Dave will make sure that the bikes and the gunfire is all gone from your area. What impressed you most about Rangers on Tuesday night? Was it the sort of never say die attitude? Was it the linesman giving the overturned yellow card? What was it that caught your eye in the performance?
Yeah, first and foremost, Guns N' Roses in Aberdeen tonight, so just to make that very clear, windows shut by the way, so you should hear me a lot better now. As for Tuesday, it was a never say die attitude. Rangers were renowned last season for obviously either resurrecting themselves through first leg predicaments or indeed having good results away from home against teams in the Europa League, in the knockout stages, and obviously getting them big results to get to the final. And Tuesday just showed that never say die attitude once again. And last Tuesday, they looked gone and dead. When they looked gone and dead, they looked like it was going to be Europa League football for Rangers. It's Tuesday, they bounced back comfortably and obviously got the job done. And full credit to Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, because a lot of questions were raised about whether Rangers were going to be the same cross position this season. I think they are, but I do think they'll be just to see, and I think there's still a lot. I think there's still a lot to be proof. The proof will be in the pudding later on in the season, so it'll be very interesting from that point of view. But yeah, in terms of Rangers, obviously got the benefit of the penalty. And I don't know who mentioned it. There was a journalist that mentioned it. It was about Tavernier scoring the penalty before half time. And had they not scored that penalty, I don't think Rangers get the job done. And then in the second half, obviously, Tavernier scoring a penalty is a good springboard for Rangers to go and get that job done. And then obviously progress through 3-0. A very lucrative tie coming up against PSV now in the next round, which is a very big tie for Rangers.
Absolutely. And when you look at it, Craig, some of the signings that have been made by Giovanni this season, they've come in and they've kind of hit the ground running. Tom Lawrence looks very comfortable in that attacking midfield position. Not sure he offers the same sort of output so far as the player that he replaced. I'm kind of looking at Kolak, who is obviously banged in a couple of goals, but they've not been anything spectacular so far. But as you say, it's all about the winning momentum in football. And if Rangers can carry that into Tuesday night, they'll think they've got a great chance of going ahead in this time, giving themselves something to defend when they go over to the Netherlands.
Definitely, and I think that, given how they played last season as well, they've almost garnered themselves a reputation within, European football for European games. I mean, even, when you compare it to the run they had under Walter Smith, where, it was, the runs aren't comparable whatsoever. That Walter Smith team sat in and just tried to nick absolutely anything, whereas last season Rangers actually tried to play a bit, and they found themselves in periods of adversity that they've overcame. So they've definitely, they've got that factor as well. What I do think that might hurt them is that the first leg is at Ibrox. Mm-hmm. I think we've seen last season that a lot of the games where, and even the game this week, where they were down or they were behind, they had the Ibrox crowd behind them. Whereas they're not going to have, it might be hard for them to, build up a lead. Might not be hard for them, to build up a lead to take over to Eindhoven. But if they find themselves behind, they're not going to have that same backing that they would at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be, I think that could be a bit of a challenge for them. If the legs were the other way about, I'd fancy Rangers to go through. But given the way it is at the moment, I think this will maybe just be one game too far for them.
It'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But Greg, they've got St Johnstone first and foremost at Ibrox on Saturday. St Johnstone coming into this game with a wee bit of decent form, certainly looking a better team than what they did last season. I think that addition of Graham Carey's a really big signing for them. He's obviously got the experience of playing lower league football down in England at Plymouth. and he's obviously been up here and done it all before. And when you look at those kind of signings, they're the kind of ones that seem to benefit teams like Charlie Mulgrew and Stephen Fletcher coming back to Dundee United, Graham Carey coming into that St Johnstone team. He just gives them another option, and obviously a last-minute winner from Stevie Way getting the win over managerless Motherwell. That was a tongue twister there last weekend, and you know, the kind of feel-good factor seems to be returning to Perth.
Yeah, it's a good win first and foremost. I think Cam Davison needed that. If you'd kind of asked earlier in the season, or sorry, before the season started, or for the group stages of the League Cup, who would be the favourite to go, I think Callum Davison probably would have topped most people's lists. Alas, it was obviously Graham Alexander leaving after the Motherwell exploits in Europe, which was very, very short-lived. But I think you're right in terms of having experience. It really does all go well if you have a kind of squad there with some youths. I think they're trying to bring through a couple of youths within St Johnstone. Even like say Ryan McGowan signing at the back as well. There's been a bit of a turnover as well with the squad, and like the Chief Seed moving on as well. They've kind of got Theo Blair as their kind of focal point. I'm still a bit fearful for St Johnstone. I still think they will be involved in the bottom 2, bottom 3 places by the end of the season. But I don't know. I think going to Ibrox, especially given the fact, I think Sir Alan McCoy was on TalkSport kind of berating the fact that the SPF, was he blaming the SFA for not allowing Rangers to postpone the fixture because the Eredivisie have done the same for PSV. I do think Rangers will have their eye on Tuesday night, so I do think they'll take their eye off the ball a little bit. I think St Johnstone need to kind of do what probably Jack Ross will do and kind of go in there, sit tight, and try and straight the crowd. But you know, I think it depends who he starts with. I think Stephen May is a good option off the bench, but I'd like it to be a draw or even a St Johnstone win. But again, I think they've got to have a good first half, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. And we're talking about Xander Clark there and potentially going to Dundee United. I was just looking at the squad there from the game against Motherwell. Remy Matthews, obviously in goal on loan from down south, I think is a great keeper. Looking at who the backup goalkeeper on the bench was, it was Parish. Is Clark currently injured? Have I missed that one?
Left at the end of his contract expired, didn't it?
So he's a free agent currently?
He's not got a club.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a surprise.
He's enjoying his honeymoon. He's enjoying his honeymoon.
They'll not be in any fit state to start in a couple of weeks' time then, if that's the case. So, back to this game at Ibrox on Saturday. We'll go in for a prediction since we're almost halfway through the show. Craig, how do you see this one going?
Having seen St Johnstone firsthand in the first game of the season, I wholeheartedly agree with Greg. They are one of the worst football teams I've ever seen. And I don't think they'll be able to hold out for as long against Rangers as what they managed to do against us. So I'm going for a comfortable 4-0 Rangers.
4-0 to Rangers. Dave, how do you see this one going?
I'm going to go for 3-0 Rangers, Colin. I just think it'll be comfortable after River Van Bronckhorst. And I think Van Bronckhorst will make changes for Tuesday as well.
Interesting. Greg?
Yeah, this scoreline's more in kind of optimism. Even then, I'm still going to Rangers win. I'll say 2-1. I just think you need Rangers to be at their worst, so Johnstone to be at their best, which I don't think they have been since they won the Cup over 14 months ago, 15 months ago. So yeah, I think it'll be a Rangers win. We'll go 2-1.
Terence Pat, Kevin Trapp coming in to say Rangers will win comfortably 3-0. I think it's hard to disagree with that one. I think Rangers at Ibrox are obviously a very difficult opponent. St Johnstone, although they're bouncing back, they're not quite at the level, as you said, they were at about 14 months ago. Greg, so I think I'll agree with that. I think I'll go with 3-0.
Colin, I understand this is a bit off topic. But Scottish Cup replays are going to be removed for the 2022-2023 season. Following a vote by member Cobbs, the Scottish FA can confirm that no replays will take place in this season's Scottish Cup beyond the preliminary round.
So that's an interesting bit of breaking news. Thank you very much for that, Dave. No replays to be made. Do you know, I think that's a sad thing. It's obviously better for the calendar, I'd imagine, with the World Cup and stuff coming in, but Craig, you've always got that sort of the wee team that comes up against the big team, and if they get them back to their own ground and they get that sort of money spinner, and it can make a big difference to their budget for the season. There's always that sort of romanticism with the cup, and that's sort of gone now, isn't it?
And I couldn't be any happier. I'm going to completely disagree
Oh well, that's fair enough
with what you're saying, because I think replays are a complete waste of time. A complete waste of time. You should be able to settle it on the day. And I think what maybe they could do is what I think they do it in Germany when the bigger clubs sort of enter the early rounds of the cup, is that they could have the so-called bigger teams, seeded teams, if you want to call them that, always drawn away.
Mm-hmm.
So then you've got that romance of the cup where you've got Hearts going to Celtic, Celtic going to Alloa, things like that. That adds a bit more, excitement. Like, because I mean, we've seen it. Who wants to see Rangers playing Stirling Albion in front of 25,000 Subway loyal on a Sunday afternoon at 12:30? Nobody wants to see it. But the intrigue that could be had from Hibs going to smaller grounds like Tynecastle for the cup. Sorry. Like, Hibs going to like these, Hibs, Hearts, Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Dundee, Motherwell, the teams that typically take a big travelling support. I think that would be more beneficial. But now replays going are, I think, are the best thing. If it's a cup game, it should be dealt with there and then. Greg,
do you agree with that?
To be fair, I think that must have been some training session you had earlier, because obviously you're lacking oxygen to your brain, because I like forgetting what the league tables were last season on that one. I kind of agree with, but then I kind of agree with, I don't want to sit on the fence, I want to get splinters, but I think what you've seen was teams that get replays, it was kind of more teams that are like part-time players. So what you're having is maybe guys from Stranraer having to trek up to Elgin for a replay, or the Highland League sides on a Tuesday night, and it's like, well, actually, what is the point in that? I think, like what Craig's saying as well, I think when you have teams coming down to play, obviously Hearts were at Auchinleck last season, Hearts have been at Brora as well, obviously that didn't work out for them, but I mean, that's obviously probably Brora's best ever result, and that was at their own patch, and I think that something like that would kind of work well. But I always remember I went to an actual Scottish Cup semi-final with Craig years ago. It was Hibs Dunfermline, and literally that game went to a replay, the semi-final, and that's when obviously I can't remember, it was like 17,000 fans or something, if that, Craig, in the replay, and it was on a Tuesday night or something. So I mean, you didn't want that.
Yeah, I can see that side of it, and I understood it kind of further on in the tournament. But in the early stages, I always kind of had that romanticism about a small team that would maybe play and get the chance to go to the big stadium and get that sort of payday. But I mean, I guess maybe it's because I've not experienced it that often. I think maybe in the last 10 or so years, Celtic have done it twice. Once against Dundee United and once against Arbroath, where Mark Wilson scored the winning goal. I mean, when Mark Wilson scores a winning goal, it's a bad night up in Arbroath. But it's a shame to see it go, but I guess we do move with the times. And I
think as well, Colin, football is so saturated at the minute. It's as soon as the seasons, now the seasons are up and motoring, you'll have games, every night of the week. I think that adding another game, 2-3 for clubs onto that. I mean, Hibs had it when we won the cup in 2016. We had to go away to Inverness 3 days after losing the League Cup final, and it wasn't great. Obviously, we had the 2-2 game at Tynecastle as well, which got taken to a replay. I just think in those circumstances, it's better to deal with than there, especially when you're talking about players playing 50, 60, 65 games a season. I think it's the right move.
To be fair, Craig, it's also another thing. It's the cost of living crisis as well. So if you're again, if someone's playing, as you're saying, so say Celtic drew like a League One side as well, and they drew there again, and then you're getting them back to Celtic Park, and again, it might be great in terms of, oh yeah, great, we'll bring them back to Celtic Park, money spinning for them. But it's the fans again. These aren't including season ticket books as well, and the clubs don't are not really able to set the price. I know the SFA have a kind of influence on that as well for minimum pricing. So again, like this as well, the cost expenditure, buying the foods again as well, the kiosks there as well are extortionate. Travel, like it's quite pricey. So I think maybe that may have had a bit of an impact in bearing as well, given.
Especially they need a maths degree to buy something at Celtic Park with the prices they've set.
They totally missed a trick. I mean, I think a mince pie is £3.13. The person that did not make it £3.14 has completely missed a trick. Let's see if any of your maths wizards get that one.
It's pie, Craig. It's pie.
I know.
Right, Craig, we'll stick with you. Livingston versus Hibs on Saturday. 3 o'clock kick-off at the Spaghetti ad for this one. David Martindale's team obviously coming into this. Certainly did a fairly decent start to the season. Victory over Dundee United. They took Rangers pretty close as well. They seem to be putting a decent team together. Hibs coming off the back of the draw on the Edinburgh Derby. This could be a bit of a sort of awkward one for Hibs. I mean, it's that plastic pitch. No one likes playing on it.
No. Well, I mean, you say draw, but the noises coming out of Gorgie would make you think we won the game last week. The Livingston's probably my least favourite ground and side to play against. I think for the majority of teams, there's a good chance you could give them a 3-4 goal scalping, or you could receive a 2-3 goal hiding yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That the plastic pitch is a complete leveler, and I just, they got a good result last week away at Dundee United, or you could argue that maybe Dundee United were tired slightly after their exploits on Thursday night, but no, they're a horrible side to face, and that's no disrespect to them. I think they play to their strengths well. They've got Big Nubly up front, a guy who will hold it in, which could work in their favour against Hibs, because we've not really got centre halves who like to get touch tight and sort of aggressive in that way. We've got our centre halves kind of tend to either stand off or charge off into areas that are completely unneeded to be charged into. So it's a difficult one. They're definitely going to be. It's definitely going to be a tough game. However, I think the overall mood around Easter Road, over the last 2 results that we've had, getting the last minute winning against St Johnstone, and then that last minute equaliser last week against Hearts.
Are you going to say last minute winner against Hearts?
Winner, aye.
Especially after the way the League Cup campaign went, I think it's shown that the drive in this team, that too often Hibs fans think we're soft, but still, Neil Lennon said it himself, that boy band mentality at times. But the last 2 games we've taken 4 points when it could have well just been 1, and it's been with practically the last kick of the game in both of them. So the atmosphere around the club right now is good. I think obviously the arrival of Martin Boyle has given everybody a lift. I think if you watched the game last week, the reception that he got, was that I can remember when Derek Rardon came back to Hibs and it was something similar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's given the atmosphere around the club a big lift. But there's no doubt, and it's tough. I'd say it's probably the toughest game that we'll have in the whole season, just because you don't know what way it's going to go.
I tell you what, Greg, I'm looking forward to Bashiri and Botes coming up against the big boy for Livingston. I think he could cause them a lot of trouble, especially with the ball bouncing all over the place. It'll be interesting to see how the kind of tackles go. And as Craig's saying, it's like you could turn up there, look at the teams on paper and go, this is going to be a comfortable win for Hibs, or this is going to be a comfortable win for Celtic or Rangers or whoever. And then as soon as that ball starts bouncing about the park, or Livingston do the sort of long throws, or the 10 men behind the ball, you're thinking, how are we actually going to beat them? They are such a unique team in that instance.
Definitely, and I think what you're saying in terms of the kind of unpredictability factor of Livingston, I also think you've got to put that down to the unpredictability factor of David Martindale, and make it I mean, we've seen that before. Marvin Bartley playing left wing back in a Scottish Cup League final. Like, who's seen that come in? Certainly not Marvin Bartley. So in terms of, I think even Newbley as well at times last season played at wing back for Livingston. So I'll be interested to see how Martindale does approach this. But I think you're right, and I think obviously Craig said that as well in terms of Newbley up front. Porteous as well. I mean, I get kind of slapped by other Hearts fans when I say I actually do think he's a player, but I think Porteous would be much more suited to the English Championship purely because he plays this role of kind of I'm the Hibs man, I'm the biggest supporter there'll be, blah 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 blah. You've seen his tackle in the derby where, listen, stupid, reckless, endangering an opponent, and I think like someone like Newbley could get him, and for me, I would like Martindale to play someone like Bruce Anderson off him as well, purely because I think he can get him amongst Hibs as well. I think that would be a good partnership, the old little and large. But Bruce Anderson's quite smart as well. He can run the channels and give that bit of legs as well. But interested to see where Hibs go from obviously last week's fantastic result. Obviously, they've been celebrating all week. They've been selling off the jerseys from it as well. Get your hands on it. One of the winning.
It's a club sponsor. That happens after every game. Move on.
Every game. Wow.
There's no story you're getting for that whatsoever. That's no in response to the game last week.
Dave, so we're going to let them two bicker. We'll put them on mute and they can bicker away.
We'll just wrap that one right there.
we'll maybe talk about the celebratory DVD later on as well, but hey ho. Dave, give us a kind of idea of how you see this one going. Who do you think is going to come out with the points if either of them?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, I think, Colin, because if you look at the Rangers game, we're going to play Rangers. The game was turned in 101 seconds or 110 seconds. It was one of the two. Rangers turned the game within a switch of the light. Basically, despite Livingston being okay and being content with the way they played, and then there's a very good display at Dundee United. I think Joel Newbley offers so much to this Dundee United, to this Livingston side. Yeah, Livingston maybe have lost the legs at Al Forrest, who offers so much creativity, but it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Livingston are showing that they're going to be competitive at Tony Macaroni again, but up against the Hibs side, who are rejuvenated after that 1-1 win or 1-1 draw, should I say, against Hearts last Sunday. So I fancy Livingston for this one, and I'm going to go for 1-0 Livy.
1-0 Livy. You boys calmed down yet?
Of course.
Craig, we'll go to you first. How's this one going?
It's going to be tough, but I'm confident that we'll be able to not wait until the very last kick of the ball to get a goal. I think we'll be able to come at the traps early, and I'm going to go for 2-0 Hibs.
2-0 Hibs. Greg?
Lee Johnson never really came up in this sort of environment before down in England, and when he's done all his coaching masterclasses for the coach's voice, etc., and refers to himself in the third person, he's the modern day Billy Davis. I think Martindale's got enough about him. I think Livingston could make top six. I'm going to go like Dave. I'm going to go 1-0 Livingston.
1-0 Livingston. You can see Craig is really desperate not to bite here. I can see it going. Look, I think as I said earlier on, the centre-half partnership will maybe struggle against Newbley, and I could maybe see a penalty getting given away, to be perfectly honest, just the way he kind of puts himself about. David Marshall, as much as he was brought in to be a sort of calming influence, I'm not sure if he's done much yet. I think his performances so far have been kind of average, and then when it came to penalty shootouts, he's not exactly stood himself in any decent stead, especially that loss to Morton. So
I think the issue, just because you are talking about the defence, I think the issue, and it was pointed out with the goal that we conceded last week, is that Porteous is our natural right-sided centre-half.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's having to cover for Paul Hanlon being out, or Paul Hanlon, as Lee Johnson wants to call him, he's playing on the left side to allow Rocky Bushiri to play on the right. And that's really nullified parts of his game because he can't, he's having to play on his stronger foot from the opposite side, so he can't try and play out for the back the way that he typically does. And I think that's what caught us out for the goal last week, is that it's almost like he had a brain fart and forgot he was left centre half. because he ends up in the right back position that gives Shankland the space to run through the middle. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Hanlon come back for this one.
Is it also written into Rocky Bushiri's contract that he's got to play every game now he's signed permanently as well? Even if he's suspended?
The funny thing is that he's probably been our best defender throughout pre-season and the start of the season. Certainly more than the highly regarded Hibs man Ryan Porteous. We'll far anyway.
We'll see how long that one lasts. I'm going to go for a 1-each draw here. I think it'll be a very, very close game. As we've said, that sort of plastic pitch is a leveller, and it almost kind of gives you a 1-goal disadvantage, I think, when you go there. So we'll see how Hibs get on. Let's go to the North East and Aberdeen versus Motherwell. Aberdeen coming into this, they've had a fairly decent start to the season. They topped their Premier Sports Cup group with 4 wins and 4. They went to Celtic Park and they put in a fairly decent performance, and then they were very comfortable against St Mirren at the weekend with a 4-1 victory. A lot of their new players getting their kind of first goals for the club. Obviously St Mirren were down to 10 men pretty early on after former Don Declan Gallagher was sent off after 23 minutes. Dave's laughing away at that. Go on, Dave, tell us a story.
No, I'm just laughing about the fact that it was Declan Gallagher, considering what he's been saying in the media about Aberdeen and how things transpired at Aberdeen. Wasn't more the likes of Declan Gallagher getting sent off. It was more because of what he's been saying in the media. So it was karma as far as Declan Gallagher is concerned.
Do you know, I was told by someone who is well connected at Motherwell, and it's not our friend here on the podcast before anybody makes any accusations, that as soon as Declan Gallagher was called in to the Scotland squad, his attitude just changed completely. He thought he was a far better player than what he was. He obviously made the move up to Aberdeen. It didn't work out for him, and now he's back at St Mirren. And to be honest, I think his level is at St Mirren. I don't see him being a quality player. I think he was just very lucky to be called into the Scotland squad, to be perfectly honest. Anyone disagree?
Yeah, no. I totally agree, and I think it's just that similar to obviously Martindale, he's obviously had a past life and made mistakes in the past. I know, for instance, he wanted a move to Hearts when he left Motherwell first time around as well. I know he kind of expected it because of Halkett as well. He thought, oh, listen, I'll get in here, and obviously I think he's passed certainly discounted him. I know Hearts took a punt and laugh at it, but I think I've been told that's the individual anything like that would not be welcomed. But going up there, I think Dave will probably get it wrong, but he would have been on a good wage as well. Probably one of the best contracts he's probably had in his career. And for that kind of financial outlay to get that sort of performance is really poor. I don't know, a lot of these guys that are kind of West Coast based just travel up to Aberdeen for training, travel back down. So I don't know if that had a part in it as well. I know there've been players in the past that kind of spend most of their time in the Central Belt and, kind of treat Aberdeen. I'll go up there for when I need to as essential. So I don't know if that had a part to play in it as well. But yeah, as I said, I don't think we'll see him in a Scotland jersey again, which is good news for any Scotland supporter.
Absolutely. Craig, looking ahead to this one, Aberdeen versus Motherwell. Motherwell still managerless, as we said. They've kind of had a hit and miss start to the season. Obviously, that victory over St Mirren on the opening day, where St Mirren did everything but score, and then the 2-1 defeat with the last-minute goal from Stevie May. It's not been the worst start. It's not been the best start, but you just think if they'd a manager in place, then they could have probably got 6 from 6.
Stevie Hamill's got the job now, is he not?
If Stevie Hamill's got the job, he has got the job, yeah. I'm saying managerless, yeah. I totally forgot he got that job yesterday. Yeah, ignore me. Stevie Hamill's the new Motherwell manager. What do you make of that?
No, they were always going to be on a hiding nothing after the Sligo Rovers debacle. And I noticed that Hamills came out today and said that he's, they need to make moves in the transfer market. I'm not going to lie, I don't think they have got anyone who can make a proper serious impact in the league this season. I also noted that they've got Brian Kerr Stevie Hamill's got Brian Kerry as his assistant, who was famous at Hibs for hiding and going missing. So I hope that doesn't rub off on any of his team, because they could very well be in for a tough season. But the new manager bounce gives them, you don't know how it's going to play. I think Aberdeen will be buoyed, obviously, by their performance last week, albeit I think it was only after St Mirren went down to 10 men that it turned into that real procession that it did. But for Motherwell, I don't know. I didn't really know what to make of Motherwell. I still think they've never really replaced Turnbull, and we all know how effective he was for them. And I know he's been gone. What is it? Was it 2 years ago that he signed for Celtic?
Yeah, he's in his third season now. I would also say you've got to put in there Alan Campbell. I think Alan Campbell's a massive loss for them as well.
And then also, I think you go back 6 months, losing Tony Watt when they did. I know Watt's never really been a prolific goal scorer, but I thought that 6 month spell, that sort of calendar year spell that he had under Graham Alexander after he got the job, has probably been the most consistent spell of his career. And losing Turnbull, then Campbell, then Watt within the space of sort of 18 months, I think is going to impact any team, but they've never really tried to replace them either. I know they've got Van Veen on a longer term deal, but I think they're going to need more than that if they're wanting to make an impact this season.
I'm not sold on Van Veen.
I'm not either, but
I think Van Veen's someone who's going to be like a 1 in 5, 1 in 6 striker, and I don't think that's good enough for Motherwell.
Yeah.
I actually agree with Jonathan Brown here. He says Motherwell need pace. Mikey Johnson would enjoy being out on loan there. I do think Motherwell's always a team that when they're at their best, they've got 2 or 3 very quick players. See, when you think back to when they had guys like Humphreys and Seedorf and players like that who could get in behind, even kind of going back to
Ainsworth, Marvin Johnson, Lionel Ainsworth.
Exactly, guys like that. They were always a tricky side, and with that slope at the Fur Pack pitch as well, it sort of played into having a quicker team. So at the minute, I'm looking at a team. I'm looking at the midfield, and you're looking at guys like Sean Goss and Maguire, and even up front Van Veen and Shields. There's not enough pace in that team. I think Hamill's got 2 or 3 weeks to try and look at it and inject some pace into that team. Otherwise, they're just going to be one of those sort of teams that sort of pludges around, and they'll maybe pick up the odd point here and there. But I don't know, Greg. I think at the minute they're my favourites for relegation.
Yeah, I think Motherwell, given the start, I think Motherwell's not always a side that's kind of flush with cash. So I think Hamill needs to do a bit of wheeling and dealing to get players out to bring his own in. Again, in terms of his content, I think he had a spell down south, but I think similar to what Jack Ross was always kind of famed for, I think Hamill would sign from Scotland, and you look around the sort of leagues and you look at the free market and free agent list, I don't know what quality Motherwell will get in to kind of turn it around. So, like you, I can't really see them pulling up trees this weekend. Certainly, again, I know we're not running out of time, but in terms of score prediction, I think Aberdeen will kind of fare well in this, and I think it'll be 2-0 Motherwell. Not Motherwell, 2-0 Aberdeen against Motherwell. That
was a bit of a heel turn there from Greg. I'm going to go with 3-0. I'm going to go with 3-0 for the Dons. I'm going to agree with Jonathan Brown in the comments. Greg?
I'd probably say the same. I think they'll be buoyed by their obviously scoring 4 goals last week. I think they scored, 12 or 13 in the League Cup group stages as well. Very unlucky, I felt, not to get a goal at least at Parkhead. I know that, I think, was it Johnny Hayes maybe that missed a...
Yeah, they kind of won from the edge of the box,
Yeah, so I think, I'll go with you boys. I'll go 3-0. I think it'll be a comfortable afternoon for them.
Dave, 4 for 4 for the Dons?
Comfortable, but I'm going to go for 4-0, yeah.
We'll take that. We'll see how that one goes. 2 games left to cover here as we go into sort of final couple of minutes, and we're going to start with the trip down the Ayrshire coast as Kilmarnock take on Celtic. Kilmarnock back in the Premier League and another plastic pitch journey for Celtic. Celtic, obviously, at this time of the year are kind of used to be playing the Champions League qualifiers or the Europa League qualifiers. So this is an interesting one for them, obviously having had the full week off after beating Ross County 3-1 the other week. I see Celtic going into this, and to be honest, I don't think they've even hit anywhere near second, third or fourth gear yet. I think there's still a lot to come out of this team. but it's going to be a difficult one again on that plastic pitch, as we said. It can come down to being a leveller. The only thing I think that's different between Kilmarnock and Livingston is I think Livingston are a very physical side, whereas taking a look at that Kilmarnock side that lost 2-0 at Ibrox at the weekend, watching the highlights, I don't think there's anybody there apart from maybe Alan Power in the midfield, what you'd say is a kind of physical type player. Craig, I think if Celtic get a goal early here, this could be a kind of sore one for Kilmarnock. I
would tend to agree. I mean, I read the sort of comments from, Rangers fans last week saying that, and I kind of share their pain in terms of having watched St Johnstone, because, Kilmarnock went to Ibrox with no intention of trying to play any sort of football whatsoever. And you can understand that to a certain extent, because if they do try and, commit, the floodgates could well open. But I don't see what Kilmarnock have got about them yet this season. I know they've got, like you say, they've got Alan Power, who's kind of, he's one of the not many remaining from the last time they were in. I mean, they've got, a few players that have been around the blocks in the Premiership, where like, Ash Taylor, they've got a couple of ex-Hibs boys. Kyle Lafferty, Fraser Murray, Ollie Shaw, players like that. But I don't think anything really stands out from a Kilmarnock perspective. I just think that, again, like with us going to Livingston, that the pitch is a leveller, and we've seen Celtic sides in the past struggle on that plastic pitch. So it's going to be, like you say, if Celtic can get an early enough goal, it could be a procession. But the longer the game goes on, the more that plays into Kilmarnock's favour.
Yeah, I think that was always the case on Saturday as well, Greg, when Celtic travelled up to Dingwall. Ross County kind of grew into the game more and more. Celtic got the goal through Kyogo, but then obviously it wasn't too long before Ross County equalised, and it was a case of seeing how long they could hold out. But that sort of never say die and never giving up attitude from Celtic was kind of coming through. You saw them pushing them right back, right up to the point of Greg Taylor being the one to win the ball back on the edge of the box to set up the second goal. Celtic obviously coming out the traps fairly decent so far, and as we said, if Kilmarnock can hold them out even up to half time, it could make it an interesting game.
It could do, and I think in terms of Kilmarnock, I don't think they'll be in the bottom relegation places. I think they'll be comfortable. They may, depending on results, go make a push for top six. But like you say, I think Celtic are a really, really good side in terms of fitness-wise, probably fittest team in the league. In terms of mix it up as well, again, you've got Giamakis as well, who big physical striker, but can play a bit as well. Give him his due. Obviously, you've got Kyogo, you've got Maeda. I mean, you've got Jota, you've got Abada. I mean, the attacking talent is, I mean, as a Hearts, Hibs, and Aberdeen fan, we'd take one of them, and they'd be our star man. And that's better than Martin Boyle. We sort of reference there. But I think in terms of Sunday's result, I think Kilmarnock could be tough to break down, but I'm not convinced with the midfield. I know Kerr McInroy, ex-Celtic youth, is in there. Power, I think, pun intended, his powers are on the wane. It wasn't that great his last season at Kilmarnock. So Mirren, he was okay, but again, he struggled obviously when Robinson came in. And the goalkeeper, I mean, talk about Xander Clark. I think if Clark needed the club, I think Kilmarnock would be a good fit. I don't know when Zach Hemming is due back fit, but I think he'd be a good signing for them. But I will go 2-0 Celtic on Sunday.
2-0 Celtic. Dave, how do you see this one going?
2-1 Celtic.
I like that. Straight to the point. 2-1 Celtic. I'm happy with enough of that. Craig, how's it going?
I think I'll go with Dave. 2-1. I think with the new, is it Moritz Jens? Is that the new centre half?
Yeah.
I think with changing him and Starfelt, I think that defence has maybe still just got a wee bit to go until it settles, until Postecoglou finds his favoured. So I'll go 3-1 Celtic.
I think it will probably be Jens that plays. I don't think you'd rush Starfelt back in on a plastic pitch, and it'll be interesting to see if any of the players that have kind of been sitting with niggling injuries play, because it's obviously easier to flare up on a plastic pitch than on a grass pitch. So it'll be interesting to see the team selection on Sunday. That is a 12 o'clock kickoff on Sunday, and it leaves us one game left to cover in the last couple of minutes here. It is St Mirren versus Ross County. St Mirren obviously sitting at the bottom of the table alongside Ross County. One of the O's will have to go this weekend. Who's going to pick up the points? Craig, we'll go to you first.
I'd be very surprised if it wasn't Ross County. I mean, that watched them. You know, you could argue they've had two of the toughest games, you know, to start the season, going away to Tynecastle and then having the champions come up to their own patch. But I think they maybe could have struggled with the loss of Regan Charles Cook, who obviously got them so many goals last season. But the addition of, I'm just trying to catch his name, is it
Edwards?
Is it the number 7 for him? Is that who hit
Edwards,
the Hearts? He
Edwards.
Seems very very tricky. Seems an able replacement for Charles Cook, and I just think, you know, with some of the, you know, they've got players that have been around the block in the league as well. They had a really good season last season under Malky Mackay, and there's a page on Twitter that's called Cinch Conspiracies, which is, you know, basically throwing out conspiracies for the cinch. And it's that one of them is that Stephen Robinson's never won a game as St Mirren manager, and I tend to believe it because I don't think they offer anywhere near what they could. You know, they've got, you know, players that have been around the block in Scottish football as well: Brophy, Curtis Main, Greg Taylor, Scott Tanzer, Mark O'Hara. You know, they're sort of players that have played a good number of games in the league. But they just never seem to. I don't understand what they offer when they play. They don't seem to have any real style, and I've felt that the appointment of Robinson was a real strange one as well.
So Ross County for you, Greg?
Yeah, Ross County for me as well. Having seen them, as Craig said, at Tynecastle, I thought they were a really strong outfit. I think they're just more than Edwards as well. I think defensively they've got a good partnership as well. Yakivite and for the captain's name, yeah, he's good as well. And I think Voskins at left back as well. Purrington at left back as well is really good. So I'll go 1-0 Ross County.
Dave, how are you seeing this going?
Yep. Yeah, 1-0 Ross County. I'm the complete opposite because I actually seen him at Bucky and I didn't think Ross County were great. But having said that, it was obviously the first game of the competitive season, and a lot's changed since then, especially from Malky's point of view in terms of recruitment. But 1-0 Ross County in Paisley tomorrow.
Do you know, I think it'll be down to the odd goal in Paisley tomorrow, and I think it will probably be Ross County because obviously St Mirren will miss that quality in centre half of the Scottish international Declan Gallagher. I mean, it's going to be a very difficult man to replace in the heart of that defence. But yeah, I think Ross County, especially if they play the way they did against Celtic, they should come away from Paisley with the points. So we have wrapped up the cinch Premiership this weekend. I think we're all in agreement of how we see the games going, with the potential of the Livingston Hibs game to be the one that causes a bit of a surprise going by the predictions. But thank you to everyone who has joined us. We've managed to keep Craig sane over the last hour or so. He's now going to go and eat everything that's in his fridge because he's not ate all day, the poor boy. And he's been put through
I don't look like it, but I definitely haven't.
He's been put through a double training session by the Open Goal Broom Hill boys earlier on, and he's looking good for it. Greg, Hearts, are you going to the game this weekend?
Yeah, got my season ticket again for this season. So yeah, I'll be very hungover going out to Edinburgh Fringe on Saturday night. So I will. I'm hoping that my Hearts cheer up my hangover.
Dave, what game are you covering this weekend?
I've got the lucrative forfeit against Elgin City tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to. So a forfeit Friday for me tomorrow, and hope Greg enjoys his Saturday night at Edinburgh Fringe, and he'll be very hungover at Tynecastle on Sunday. Here's hoping Leachy enjoys his short journey to Livingston.
Thanks, mate.
Well, I tell you what, Dave, with all those videos you've been putting in of you pumping the iron in the gym, I hope you don't have too many of those bridies, mate. Gents, it's been a pleasure joining you for this Friday night. The sun's probably gone to our heads. It's been fantastic to have the Barbershop Quartet back together. We'll be back on Monday to review the cinch Premiership and see how the games go and see if Craig's in a better mood at this time next week. hopefully his Hibs side will get another last-minute winner.
Hope not. I hope not. Or a last-minute equaliser winner, depending on how your persuasion is.
Once again, thanks for joining us here on the State of Scottish Football live on A State of Mind. If you haven't already done so, leave us a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. We'll be back next week. If you are going to the game, enjoy it. And here is all. Let's raise a glass to the cinch.